Hey, everybody, welcome back to Gray Maybe. If you're a new listener, welcome. And if you are a returning listener, thanks for coming back. I really appreciate all the support, all the listens, all the shares, all the recommendations. It helps the pod out. It helps me know that what I'm doing is not falling on deaf ears, and it keeps me motivated to keep going. So today I have a very good friend of mine. The amount of dressing rooms that me and this lady have been in, and not even the amount, I guess the sheer volume of time we have spent in dressing rooms. And for those of you who may not know about show business, dressing rooms or entertainment industry dressing rooms, I mean, like, it's not that exciting, really. It's like an office in less clothes usually. But we talk about all kinds of things, and we are constantly talking about, it seems like, things that really matter to us. We're not super, surface talkers in these rooms. So it's everything from relationships to things that are going on in our lives. And this has happened over a series of years with this one. So I'm so pumped that she agreed to come on today and share her story. This person has had. Let me keep going. You don't get to say hello yet, Jenny. Sorry. So this person is a true triple threat too. I just want to say that. So we met dancing, but this artist is also an extremely accomplished actor, extremely accomplished singer, has worked in all three avenues, and is just such a talent. And so I'm pleased to have her on for that as well. And I hope you check out her work. She has a production company. She's a one-woman everything show. She's a jack of all trades, master of all trades. And I just want to say all that. And so, again, I'm so happy to have her. I'll finally let her talk, and I'm going to shut up. Jenni Nicole Bloom, welcome to the pod.
Thanks. I mean, that was a fantastic intro. I don't
add some stuff. Voiceover artist too.
Oh, yeah.
I put that in the acting category, I guess.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree. I mean, that was a very excellent intro, and it's very true. Like, I feel like, I don't know, if water cooler talk and normal people's jobs were like super personal.
Yeah.
I don't know
if HR didn't get involved ever.
There's no HR in our dressing rooms.
And there's no code of conduct, and there's no there's no, I mean, like, this is going to make it sound really glamorous, but it's like, these dressing rooms, you're getting naked, number one. So that's, hey, how you doing? Welcome to work. Get naked, because it's a changing room. And then on top of that, you're like usually allowed to drink alcoholic beverages. You're usually allowed to, there's just like no rules really, but they're not glamorous. We're in like alcohol closets and shit.
They're very small.
I won't
room.
mention the venue, but there was a dead rat in one that we smelled for weeks. Months, I feel like. It just kept evolving. Do you remember? It started as like I think something died, and then it went on to something definitely died, and then it went on to, oh my God, when is this thing going to decompose enough so that we stop smelling? Because we couldn't find it. We were looking for it.
There was another dressing room we were in where the deep freeze stopped working and no one knew. And
I'm pretty sure that was the same dressing room.
Is that because
there was that too? Yeah, the deep freeze stopped working. Nobody knew, and it was just stinking.
So bad.
So bad.
How? Why does it take a bunch of girls to go somewhere and be like, "Excuse me, what is that smell?"
Yeah.
You don't smell that?
And actually find it. Find the smell. We couldn't get at the rat because it was like under built-in situation. But we would have found it if we could have, and we would have made someone get it, or we probably would have done it ourselves.
This
went
from
so
so glamorous to like.
to completely, nobody ever wants to be in our line of work ever, which is fine. So these dressing rooms, but I one of my favorite parts of that work that we have done and maybe still do is those moments of like hanging out in dressing room with people you really like. And I've cherished those times and those memories. It's been one of my favorite parts about the gig. I don't want to talk about the weather, so please don't talk, unless it's like devastation. No.
Yeah.
I only want to talk about stuff that matters. So if the weather really matters to someone, I guess we could talk about it. But, we always talked about our lives and like what was really going on. And in a lot of those conversations, there were a lot of things that you would confide in me about your life, which some of those things you're going to talk about today. And, I always felt very privileged that you would share them. And I think they're very complicated. And I'm really pumped that you're pumped. I don't know if pumped is the right word, but I'm really touched that you would share them with people today, because I think it's complicated. And I think abuse is complicated. And I think this could really help some people. So would you mind giving us a little bit about your story or your experience with whatever abuse or abuses you want to share today?
Whew. This is really complicated because it's like I'm looking at a really good friend of mine where I'm
Right.
just used to like sharing everything, but I have to remember where I am.
Right.
So it's really interesting. Oh, gosh, I've done so much work on this. I mean, when I started doing work on this, I'm probably going to get into this in a really roundabout way. I was really tired of feeling, I don't know, shame of not being enough. Because when you're raised by people who are one is definitely a narcissist and the other one's a codependent, you're a child trying to make sense of where you are. And when you're ruled by shame, it doesn't leave you with much of a self-esteem. And I feel like got to a point, like 5 years ago, where I was asking you a lot of questions on like, what do you think about therapy and options and stuff like that? Because I was just getting really tired of not believing in myself. And to be an artist where it's important to be vulnerable, but also you're scared to be vulnerable because people have hurt you, it ends up just clashing, and you cannot move forward as a professional or a person because art is inherently vulnerable. So how do I keep the best parts of me and heal the other parts? And I try to see the parents that I grew up with as individual people as much as I can without getting too many of my own resentments in there. So hopefully like I could see them with forgiveness and build on it from there. By looking at like their upbringing and try to understand the children that they were. But it still is really hard. It's really hard. Then you go into those family dynamics and then you accidentally, as every family does, like you do all this work on yourself and then you go home and then you just fall into these old cycles of behavior.
Amen, girl, because it was just the holidays. So I think we all just came back from being teleported back to our childhood selves, no matter how much therapy and like 12-step programs we've done. Like, that's just how it works. You're absolutely right. Like, that's what happens. And it's all of a sudden you're like 12 years old again or 6 years old again. And you're like, I can't believe this is still happening. And sometimes it's not you teleporting yourself. Sometimes it's people around you who refuse to acknowledge who you are now or, treat you differently as an adult or whatever. I think it's really interesting. I've interviewed a couple people before you, and it seems like there's definitely a common thread of childhood. Do I want to say trauma? Like childhood adversity, right? Chaotic childhoods where children did not have a healthy self-esteem. And that seems to be a through line of people who have experienced some significant abuse. So I'm just going to say that for listeners, just to do whatever you want with that information. If you relate to that, if you're raising children, like consider that. Like self-esteem in children can be a almost like a mark on a kid for being attracted to, or for a bully or an abuser to be attracted to, or a narcissist, to grab. So I love that you brought that up, because I think that's something that's also kind of being brought up over and over again. And, everybody's so concerned about like, well, how do I keep my kid from being abused, or how do I keep myself from being in these situations? And there can be some cure, and I think it has a lot to do with self-worth and self-confidence. But that is not easy. That's not easy. He's just like, just be confident. Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. You don't just be confident. You can fake it, but that doesn't help you from like the deep truth of how you feel inside, and then what that leaves you vulnerable to. Being an artist is all about vulnerability, and it is like a block when you can't access certain parts of yourself, but at the same time need to access them. And it's like, for me, I felt like if I accessed those parts, I would never be able to be like, if I started crying, I would never stop, so I had a lot of blocks in that, accessing myself, especially for speaking, acting work, stuff like that was really hard for me to access because of the way I grew up and a lot of the experiences I had. I was not encouraged to ever use my voice. So it always felt really scary to do. No matter how, trivial it was, it just was scary. And, hence dance became so important because I didn't have to use my voice. But moving on with more of your story. So, you had started talking to me and other people like, hey, what do you think of therapy? You're feeling like a lot of artistic blocks, and since some of that work, you've realized that you were raised by people that maybe did not cultivate the self-esteem. I'll put that as lightly as possible because I know more about you, but, like that wasn't exactly an ideal, upbringing for artistic freedom and creativity and nurturing that.
So that's actually a really double-edged sword in my family, and kind of linking this back to what you were saying. So my mom was actually like a child prodigy tapper in South Africa, and that's how my family got over to America on my mother's side. And so, she would always have me dance with her, and dance is how I got her love and attention. And she felt like she was going to be a star. She was going to be on the Bobby Darin variety show. And literally she was she was in LA. They got rid of their house. They moved over here. They left their sons behind just to like concentrate on their daughter. And like, she started rehearsals on Monday. Bobby Darin had heart palpitations on Wednesday. He was dead by Friday. And so this child prodigy, like, everyone was in America. Nobody knew what to do. The parents are trying to my grandparents are trying to figure out what to do. At the time, they had like these briefcases with all your credentials, with all your cutouts, with all the shows and stuff you did. My grandfather loses it. And like now my mother has nothing. So then you have a daughter who wants to be in the arts, and she feels like her everything got dropped out on her. My grandfather, who sang to me every morning, there's a song by, I think, Donovan, Juniper lies upon a hill. Like every morning I'd get this song sung to me. So I grew up in a really musical family. Mm-hmm. My grandfather was a show producer in South Africa. So it's this weird double-edged sword. So I am pushed through the arts. I get all my mom's attention that way. And then, my stepdad starts telling me that I need to concentrate by the time I get to high school, on real jobs, on real things that real people do. And I don't feel like he was living any sort of dream or any life that he loved. So I was like, yeah, no. I'm 16. I know everything. No, I'm going to do what I want to do.
We all did.
I know.
I mean, some of us kind of did know it. Like, we knew it was up.
Yes. I'm glad that I held on to that truth of myself, because I knew it from a very young age. I wanted to be in the arts. Like, there was no telling me no. And I had enough people in my family that fostered that, I really wanted to be a singer, but I got my mom's attention by dancing. So I wanted my mom's attention, which I didn't really connect that until a few years ago when a dance teacher from middle school was like, oh, yeah, that's how you got your mom's attention. And I was like, whoa, you're right. Oh, my God. I love it. I'm good at it. And like you said, I don't have to explain my feelings or hear that, what I'm feeling is not what it's feeling when you have a narcissistic parent. They're going to tell you how to feel and what box you're in and how to live in. And you are going to do everything you can to fit into that box to make sure that the eggshells you're walking on don't break. And crying actually was one of the things that I could actually do. And I still cry on a dime. And as a teenager, I would get made fun of in my family for having that kind of vulnerability, for saying how I felt and crying about it. And my sister goes, there she goes crying again. And I'm like, I'm crying because I can't slap you across the face. I'm like, what do you want? What do you want? Do you want me to tell you how I feel, or do you want me to go straight to anger?
Right.
And so as I became an adult, it was much easier to do that secondary emotion of hurt and go straight to anger. It's more acceptable. People understand it better. Women are bitches, but that's easier than a woman crying, and then you don't have to feel bad for her. Yeah. I still get in my family, oh, there Jenny goes being emotional again.
Yeah, I do relate to that. I relate to that not being really acceptable in my family or honored at all, as a feeling expression. It was always keep crying or I'll give you something to cry about, that kind of stuff. It was immediately discredited. The minute I cried, it was oh God, it's just a discredit. Oh, now you're not serious, now you're an unserious person. And so I learned really quickly to try to cover that part of myself to be taken seriously. And it was very difficult for me because that wasn't natural to me. And it's true. I think women cry when they are angry because they don't know what to do with that anger. And we're not really championed to express it. In fact, we're kind of told the opposite. So I definitely relate to that. So as you're growing up and your stepdad tells you you need to do the serious stuff, you need to be serious, what does that mean? You need to get a real job? What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, I will never forget the day. Here, this person, I mean, I got spankings for reasons I still don't know. I remember, so my dad went to jail, and my dad always had this my mother always said, because I said so. So I'm going to explain to you why. So here I had a parent that would sit down and be like, why can't I do this? Well, if you go and grab the cat's going to scratch you. Okay, well, then I won't grab the cat. You got to pet nicely and stuff. I would have a parent that was patient enough to say that. And my stepdad was much younger than my mom, a baby. I mean, very, very in his early 20s by the time he had married with a 5-year-old. I can understand how that's very overwhelming to go from a very young 20-year-old to having a 5-year-old and not having the words or the understanding of how to talk to that person. And the parents he had, people spank their children. So I would say, but why? And he'd say, stop talking back to me. And I'd say, what's talking back? And he'd be like, that's talking back. And I was like, I don't understand what that means. And, you know, I didn't say I don't understand what that means, but I would just keep parroting what he was saying. And then the physical abuse started. And by the time I was a teenager, it was like the mental abuse of like, your dreams aren't going to come true. Come up with a real job. You know, he stopped spanking me by the time I was 12, which was very interesting because that was the same time I developed. Which,
yeah. 12 is a little late too. I feel like, not to interject and give my own opinion, but like, that's a little like, bro.
Yeah.
And also, for those who may be listening who were prodigies maybe, but products of the 80s and beforehand, where spanking was totally a thing that just happened, like it is now considered abusive. And it's also considered sexual abuse, actually, if you look it up. Spanking. I was spanked as a child. I don't think my parents, were doing it to do any kind of sexual gratification, but it doesn't omit the fact that a child processes it like sexual abuse. Just throwing that out there for anybody who may have some conflicting feelings about being spanked in their upbringing. So at 12, the spanking stopped. A lot of mental abuse. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't... I still try to put it into perspective of like looking through his lens so I don't totally resent this person without compassion. That's what he was raised with. But like, just because your life is the way it is doesn't mean that that's the way my life has to be. I hope that when I become a parent, I nurture whatever they have. And try to find the opportunities for that child based on their interests. Who knows? And then later on, that relation turned into some sort of a weird sexualized kind of thing. So when all you've wanted was, my dad ended up coming out of jail by the time I was 10, and he's apologized to me and wished he was there and this, that, and whatnot. And I love my dad, but by that time I didn't remember him. I did not value my actual father's opinions or feelings. He was a stranger to me. And so even though I was allowed to start visiting him again right like around 10, my stepdad was the male figure I wanted. I wanted all the love and attention and affection from. I wanted to fit into the new family. They had a few more kids after me, and I just wanted to feel like I belonged. And there were many, many times that I have felt like an outsider in my own family. And I don't think, again, anyone's doing it on purpose, but like when your sibling's born right before you turn 7 and you see the way the attention is given to them and you go, that's not the same for me. Like that, I can tell that that's, one of these parents' first child. I don't longer feel like I belong. And then just trying to do anything you can to feel like you belong.
Right, that you're worthy.
Yeah. I mean, I would do anything. I was a very good child. You told me what to do and I would pretty much do it.
And you took care of your siblings a lot. You did a lot in your family from what you've told me.
Yeah, I babysat them every summer. I think I turned like 11 or 12. I was like, yeah, our babysitter just naps. And my mom was like, great, you mean you watch them? And I was like, well, yeah, the babysitter was napping. She's like, don't have to get a babysitter. That saves us money.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like, yeah. I'm not going to say anymore. I don't want to tell your story.
God, I mean, you can prompt me for sure because there's definitely things
I was going to bring up parentification, which is like treating your child like they're a parent, like they're your buddy, and that they're an equal partnership in the parenting things and or not even the parenting things, but the responsibilities of the household. So there's a fine line, right, between like giving your child responsibilities, helping them learn how to take care of others and help out and do their part. And then there's parentification, where you're literally, it's a whole other thing. I encourage people to look that up for themselves and see if they feel like it resonates with them. I feel like you're definitely, unfortunately, and this is all my own opinion, take it what you will, like from the things you told me, you're kind of very much a poster child of that.
So this word you just used was given to me by my therapist. And it was trying to make me understand a relationship with one of my siblings. And even if my siblings don't see me as like, because I would say to her all the time, I'm like your second mom. I'm like your second mom. She's like, you're not my mom. And I'm like, no, I'm not your mom. God, thank God I'm not your mom, just because I don't want to have had kids when I was like 7. You know what I mean? But I've been treated that way.
You were trained.
And what I was trying to do in that moment was like have her see it through my eyes, but I didn't realize how on track I was. And now it's like, I explained some things that I feel like, because you're always explaining to your therapist what's going on through your lens. So I'll say, this is what happened with my family. And I'm like, I just don't understand why I'm grouped in with my mom constantly. And like, I'm separated. Like it's us and them. Why am I not just like one of the other kids? And it's like, because you've been parentified and you are an extension of your mom. So however they're feeling, it's easy to put it on you as well. And I was like, oh God, I didn't even know that was a thing. So that this is carried on into our adult life. And I remember saying stuff when I was younger, like, oh God, around, high school. And my sister, standard sister stuff, would go in your room and take a t-shirt and then like, oh God, why she would put it at the bottom of her hamper instead of like back in the bottom of my hamper. So like, oh, maybe did I wear it, or like wash it and put it back? No. It would just stay there, and her laundry would stack so high, it would be overfilling until you go and look, and I would scream and yell. And like, she'd be like, who cares? Like, whatever. It's like stealing mom's clothes. Like, who cares? I mean, she did that to my other siblings. I don't remember what the point of this was anymore, but
I mean, you're the mom, so, and you get treated like the mom. And so you didn't get the grace of just being a sister, because like in that moment, like, yeah, that's what things that sisters do. But did your mom ever come in and help settle that? No. You were just like,
oh, that's where it was. And so I would go to my parents and I would cry and I say this would happen, and then it would turn into a bigger fight. And then I would say, if we do not get along now, how are we supposed to get along as adults? Basically, if you don't step in and help us get along now, how are we supposed to have good relationships? And I was hoping for that parental guidance. I feel like I literally said that at like 16 or 17. I saw it.
I believe that you did.
I just, I keep getting put in charge. So I'm seeing how it plays out. And like, even as being an actress, like, you look at problems and you make up a fake past to go up with this character, and then you kind of see where that moves on. I was able to do that like as a kid in my own life, like I could see where the this has been going on for a while. I can see the trajectory going the same way without any intervention. And again, that was me being a parent, hoping that the actual parents were going to step in, and it was very frustrating. I didn't leave home even though I wanted to, after my parents didn't support me going to the college I wanted to go to, because I had gotten into Cal Arts, but they were like, oh yeah, we're not, it's $40,000 a year, it's the same as Harvard, we don't care if it's one of the top 10 dance colleges in the country, like, you'll never pay that back. What, you think you'll pay that back with dance? And I was like, oh, there we go, not believing me again. Great. Okay. But You
I
know,
mean, not to join them in the dream killing, but I'm so glad you didn't pay $40,000 a year, because you had a career, an amazing career. You continue to have a career without that, and
yeah.
you're not paying student loans now for that, at least.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any other stuff that, like, if you went to a different college, but at least there's not that. But yeah, the dream crushing, not cute.
Yeah.
Not at all cute. And the parentification, so, and I feel like I'm saying it weird. It's like parental.
Parentification.
I'm saying it weird,
Yeah.
but just everybody give me a break. I'm not quite awake yet this morning. But it's after 10, so I should be. But it's difficult for me. So there's a couple things, like, I don't relate on as deep of an issue of a level as you with that. There were some things in my family where my mom would say things to me that you would say to someone your age or someone in your position, not to your kid. So there was always like a, be careful who you marry, after a particularly stressful interaction with my dad, or one of her favorite ones, which I guarantee you, if I told her this today, she'd be like, I never said that. But she said it so many times. Like, I literally remember hearing it so many times. Like, she'd be like, if it wasn't for you kids, right? Like, fill in the blank. If it wasn't for you kids, what? Like, you would leave and move to Boca Raton? Like, what does that mean? Like, if it wasn't for you kids, right? And then it was, my dad, like, being really terrible to my mom. And then when I would enter the room, his whole mood would change. He would be so sweet to me, right? Like, that's confusing and it's weird. And it's uncomfortable for a kid to figure out, like, okay, so you're in a bad mood, you're treating mom like shit, but I walk in and now I'm like a princess. Like, this is weird. It feels weird. So there's stuff like that I definitely relate to on that end of what is all included in that overarching term. So, like, as you're going through, like, the physical, the mental, I consider dream killing spiritual abuse as well. And then, like, the sexual stuff, like, did you consider it abuse when it was happening? Or, like, how did you process that? Or when did you process it if you didn't notice it in the moment? Most people don't notice it in the moment.
Sexual stuff was weird. God, I really, this is, like, hard for my family to hear. So if you're here, be warned. You probably want to stop. Like, there are memories that, as I started thinking about this, that kind of came to the forefront that I've completely suppressed and forgot. Most of my childhood, like, after, I don't remember a lot of my childhood at all. But, like, I remember the weird things kind of started after I developed, and the sexual stuff. And, there's a lot of comments on my clothes, which I feel like are pretty normal for most parents. I think girls need to be told that, because there are predators out there, but I really wish they weren't told like it was, like, my fault, Right. But I literally think it wasn't to protect me, really. In my case, in my mind, how I've interpreted it, like, a lot of comments on my clothes. Then there would be, and then when I would hang out with my dad, no comments on my clothes. Zero. My actual father, zero, none. And then there was this one time we were buying my mom a gift at Costco, and we were walking around the little jewelry counter. And we were there buying my mom jewelry, looking at a present for her because she wasn't with us. And he cupped my butt. And then I like, jolted around. And he goes, sorry, I thought you were your mom. And I was like, what? I don't, how old was I? I don't know.
I'm sorry, it doesn't matter your age, because
so
that
like
is fucked up.
14,
like,
16.
So he's testing the waters. He's like, let me see, like, there's no way he mistaken you for your mom. Like, let's be real.
Okay. Yeah. So I completely forgot that memory. I was like, yep,
Right.
okay, it was a mistake.
Well, because you're like, he gaslit you into thinking that it was a mistake. So just give him the reason of the doubt. Like, it wasn't real. It didn't happen because he didn't mean it, because it was a mistake.
And then there was like, when everyone had a house computer, there was a lot of like underage porn that was going on, 18 and under, or barely legal. Why? Because those things kept, before we had pop-up blockers, they were all the same thing.
Right.
And so it's like, here I am, like a senior in high school. I'm like, this is weird. Going into college, this is weird. This is weird that this is what you're looking at. And then, I did a bikini competition and a bodybuilding competition in the bikini division when that first came out. And my mom and him were, trainers and stuff like that. And my mom was letting him paint the girls for whatever reason.
And what does that mean? Paint the girls?
So when you
for people who aren't a part of that culture,
when you are in a bodybuilding competition, you basically stain your skin like this, like really dark brown.
Donald Trump orange.
No, way darker.
way darker.
Way darker, and more on a more brown. Like
brass,
if you were like I don't know, like a beautiful, like almost Indian girl.
There's like a shimmer to it too. It's like
it's gorgeous.
Bronze.
Yeah, you're totally painted, and you paint your entire body because you're in a bikini. And the point of that is when you flex your muscles, or it shades your. It's like if you put bronzer all over your body. So you're it shades your muscles so that they look more cut, and that's the point of that. The definition of that. And so like he had been doing that. So you do that naked generally, or like in a teeny tiny thong or something.
And what do you use? Is it a spray? Is it a lotion?
It's a brush.
Is it a paintbrush? It's an actual
you
paintbrush.
You can do spray, but there's also like a brush.
Like a brush. Okay.
And like my mom was like, yeah, your dad's doing it. And so instead of my mom painting my naked body, I'm 23 at this point, and he's painting my naked body. But this has been all accepted. And, at this point, I'm a dancer. I'm working professionally. I had done a showgirl style topless review in Vegas.
Yeah.
I had asked my mom not to bring him because it was very sexual. She had brought him. I fake orgasm in that show. I was a host.
So you just like no boundaries. Like you're just like used to not being respected.
And I had asked for that like, don't bring him to the show. Bring a friend. Bring anybody. But please don't bring Dad, because it's really weird. Like I pretend, it's Vegas. It's like sexy, and like it was a variety show. I was like, please don't. So I was very upset that those wishes weren't granted. So after that, like, here I am getting painted up close and personal. And I knew in the back of my head it felt weird, but there had already been so many things at that point. And then it turned into, and this I talked about in the dressing room for sure. And then it turned into him coming at me different ways about like doing naked pictures. And my mom would be more comfortable if I did it. He wants to take photography. I mean, he had gotten professional backgrounds and cameras and lights. And I mean, he looked like he was doing what he was saying. I'm living in LA at this point. I don't know what's going on back home. I said no multiple times. I had done pretty much kind of topless stuff with other people, but I'm like, it's my dad. Like that's weird. And then I was like, okay, well, the one thing you can't take a picture of is like my vagina. That would be great, even though it's technically a labia. I didn't know it at that time, but like you can't do that. So we had taken pictures, and he had asked me to get in a position on all fours and walk behind me, and took the one shot I asked him not to take. And like I've only ever like been, I guess it'd technically be raped once, and it's that feeling of like you freeze and like nothing's real, and then your blood turns to ice, and you're like, this can't be happening, and then I don't know where you go. Like you do this vacant thing where you like try to leave your body. And so when it was over and I finally put all my clothes back on, I was like, so what are you going to do with those pictures? He's like, oh, you told me not to take them, so I'm going to erase them. And I'm thinking in my head, well, why did you take them? Like,
right.
I just don't believe you.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to say that that was the beginning of the end. But it was for me, but I wish like I had been able to, in that moment, like stand up for myself and being like,
Right,
there's been
right.
too much. It wasn't until they got divorced that I kind of like spoke about it. But I had gone back to the dressing room after that particular incident. Like, oh, I got these pictures and some of them are really cute. And I was like, this is what happened. And it was you and one other girl in the dressing room. And you both went, what? What?
Okay.
What the fuck just happened?
I'm so glad you brought this story up because I was like, I wonder if she's going to, in my head this morning, I was like, I wonder if she's going to tell the record scratch moment.
Yeah.
And to me, like, I remember this moment, and I'm glad you're verifying it, validating it, because I'm like, maybe, did I make that up? Did that just happen in my head? But
no.
I remember you telling this story, and I remember us literally like a record scratch, like, no. Like, just no, Jenny, no. Like, no. Because you were already like, this is kind of weird. You told it like that he did these things, and it was like kind of to you almost like annoying. Like, I can't believe he did. I told him not to, and I didn't, it's like bothers me, like this whole thing. And we're like, record scratch, no. Like, this is no. This is just no. This is a whole big, like, absolutely, this is inappropriate, and this is not cool, and this is not, like, this is terrible for you. This is terrible.
Yeah.
And like, I, in order for someone to get to the point where they're talking about it in this matter of fact way, where you, in my opinion, and as an outsider hearing, had been groomed for so long, and your boundaries crossed for so long to get to that point, and of course have the boundary crossed again, and it's so heartbreaking because it's like you were someone who was already, free and, very expressive in your dance art and like what the jobs you were willing to do. And these things didn't stop you from continuing on a lot of that stuff. Like a lot of the work we did was burlesque, very flirty, very teasy, very fun, and to me, it never seemed like you were doing it from a place of like self-objectification again, like you just were this really open, free person. And for someone to take advantage of that and to like push boundaries so many times to continue to try to get what they want, like, it pisses me off. And like, I'm sure like that's the grooming, right? Like the grooming, you don't just get abused. I mean, sometimes you do, but like usually if it's someone in your life that has access to you, it's so repetitive and your boundaries just keep getting crossed. And you're like, okay, well, I got over that, so I guess I'll get over it. And it just like keeps happening. And the saddest part about it is the people who are being abused are like eternally optimistic. They're like, well, like they're eternally like, look, you already gave earlier your preamble. I want to be empathetic to these people. I want to see that and it was a lot for that. Like every person who's been on this podcast has a little bit done that, right? They have more empathy for these perpetrators than these perpetrators, I guarantee, ever had for their victims.
Yeah.
And and everyone on this podcast is forever optimistic that they won't do it to them again, or that if they just are empathetic enough to their situation, they can escape what happened to them. And I think empathy is a great thing. I think it's a useful tool in recovery of like, yeah, my parents weren't perfect, or this person wasn't perfect, or you can see how this person would be this, or they were abused when they were a child. And that is an important part of like healing. But it is like so hard to hear people who are so good be so taken advantage of and abused, and their boundaries be crossed over and over again. But I remember that record scratch moment as exactly that. And I remember the look in your eye, like if I could, I haven't thought about it long enough to give it the right words, but it was a mix of oh shit, everything, wait, is this, like, it was a bit of validation. It was a bit of support. It was a bit of, I don't know if I believe them, quite yet. And it was a bit of like, yeah, I always knew this was kind of shitty, like, but it was in that moment, it was like all of that at once. And I remember that moment. And I feel like after that moment, I'm not saying it was that exact
No,
moment
it was
in the dressing
that
room.
exact moment in the dressing room.
I feel like after that, you were like, yeah, this shit, and guess what else? And guess what else?
Yeah.
And guess what else?
It's kind of like making this whatever. Like, it was like a boyfriend cheating on you, and you just found that out, except for it was my fucking, father figure that I loved. And then I was like, wait a second, you're right. And I completely... It was like I was done with that relationship after that. After I I had a boyfriend at the time who was like, if you can call him that, but he was like, I don't want those pictures. I don't want to see him. I don't want to hear about him. That was not right. He didn't like say he didn't want to be with me or fuck your dad or whatever, but like, it was those reactions that made me go, hold on. I have to take care of me. And to comment on the burlesque, like, burlesque was my choice. Burlesque, I could be as whatever as I wanted with my own body. I created that thing. And, I feel like, at least for me and maybe for all of the other people who have gone through similar abuse, it's like, it must be so painful to be living in that body that's inflicting all of this pain on somebody else. I don't ever want my humanity to be lost because of that. Or I don't want to turn into that. Obviously people who are willing to talk about this, who are going through recovery, hopefully they've gotten to that side. That's, unfortunately not the case for everyone. It's very corroding. It taints the waters. It's really hard to keep going some days when you have the intrusive thoughts of what you've been told. That sometimes I believe those things that I fought so hard against. To keep my humanity and my art and my love for life. It's not always easy. It's hard to be alone. Thank God for therapy. Thank God you told me about that number.
Which number?
Pepperdine had the...
yes.
Had the
sliding scale therapy for the
master's,
trainees.
For the master's program.
Which is where I found, I'll add a link, which is where I found my therapist that I really like as well.
And I had a therapist right before COVID started. Oh my God, January 2020, guys. That's when I started. Thank God, because it kept me grounded.
Excellent timing.
Timing. Couldn't have been better. It was like I'd gone for 3 sessions, which were, oh my God, it was so scary to go to that first session. It was so scary to go to that first session. I wanted to get over...
What were you scared of?
I wanted to get over my anger for my stepdad, but that's not what ended up... It ended up being about me. You know what I mean? The first things they have to get to know you, so you kind of rehash a lot of the things that you feel like you're working with, and it's just scary. And then I ended up getting another therapist and then following her when she left her program. And I don't want to concentrate like everything on my stepdad, because there's still like, my mom, God, my mom allowed it to happen. Fortunately, like, she went into recovery in AA when I was 10. So she had language for me, even though she didn't know how to live by it, where as I'm going through a lot of my preteens and my teenage years, where she was telling me the things that were correct. So I was getting some information with some solid base. And I was trying to live by it. I was watching my mom try to live by it, even though it's very hard when you're like in your 30s and you're trying to make this big change. You know, I appreciate her effort to try to change. And even though she's not able to vocalize things to me directly sometimes, which I really wish she was, because she's living with a lot of shame from abuse herself. So, you know, where are the lines for her, and what was like, those have already been crossed in her childhood. Because I feel like you're going to hear the story and be like, where was your mom? A broken person as well, trying to figure it out, who has had all of these sexual abuse things and all of that kind of stuff. Her parents giving up on her feeling neglected, and in some ways trying so hard to fix herself, it kind of turned into neglect in kind of a way for me when I needed it.
You know, the interesting thing is, you're like, I think people are going to think, where is your mom? And I think that thought might come from people who aren't familiar with abuse. I think people who are familiar with abuse are like, it doesn't matter, because people sometimes are really good at hiding things from other people, right? Abusers they do this in the dark. They do it secretly. They do it, you know, like, it's not necessarily always at the forefront and in front of people's faces. And on top of that, denial is a hell of a drug for people. You know, denial is, it's intense. So as someone who I feel like is a little bit more familiar with abuse, I don't think that at all about your mom. I wish she could have been a knight in shining armor for you, but I wish that anybody could have been that for you in those moments, right? But I don't think abusers are not sly, sleek people. You know, like, I think a lot of abuse happens by people who are really kind of smart about it. Even if they're not smart people, they might be smart about how they do things, right? They're manipulators, a lot of them. And so I'm more interested to ask the question, like, where was your mom, but not like, where was your mom?
Yeah.
You know, like, not accusatory, like, where. I think people who are familiar with abuse are like, oh, where was your mom? Like, where was she in all of this? Versus like, and where was your mom? Like, why didn't she do so? You know, like, I think it's a valid question, but from a different lens, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. My mom ended up being the breadwinner by the time I was in high school. And she even told me, like, even now, in her 60s, she's like, I've just learned how to, like, slow down. Like, she goes, I spent so long just trying to work and get things done and
survive,
like,
right? Because you have two sisters and a brother, or three sisters and a brother.
Two sisters
and a brother, plus you, 4 kids. Yeah. Full-time working chick.
Yeah. And she dealt with, you know, verbal abuse and physical abuse, and she's had an eating disorder on and off, which, you know, I don't think body dysmorphia ever stops after you have it, at least like in my experience living with my mom and dancers that I've
I
witnessed.
can verify.
Yeah,
it doesn't go away.
So like having that kind of, and that need to control and have something to control, and at least you can do that one thing. My mom, and you know, that started at 11. So she had, was that might have happened around, even though I don't know my mom associates that way, I wonder if that happened around actually when she came to America and everything like kind of didn't work out. But like there's been, and there was nothing in the 70s to hold on to, you know. I feel like there's a lot more resources now, you know, so that this intergenerational trauma gets passed on, or she doesn't see the red flags, and that becomes your stepdad. And still, I wish my mom was further along in seeing her worth, you know, still in the relationship she's in. I wish she would see how amazing she is. She's a joy to be around. She's a life of a party. You know, she's got creative. She's got all these amazing things about her. And watching her put herself second to keep order in the house, or just like to stop a fight or whatever. Like I used to fight her fights for her in my head. Like they would get into fights. I'm like, oh, just stand up for yourself. Just say this, to the point where I won't say anything mean. Like not in my relationship. If it gets to a point where it gets to name calling, I will not do it, because that was the fights that I heard, and I was like, that's unnecessary. Like as a child, I'm listening to this stuff as an 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old. I'm fighting fights for, like, if I were in the conversation listening at the door, with my husband now, my boyfriend at the time, I think we were like 2 months in, 3 months in. I got a little catty to a girl who was like clearly flirting with him, and he turned around to me and he said, that's not cool. He had a few drinks into him, but normally he doesn't stand up to me. And I was like, wait, what? What? Excuse me? And it kind of got into a conversation the next day when all parties were sober. And I was like, hey, I don't think I realized certain things were crossing boundaries for you. Will you make sure that you tell me when a boundary's crossed, like when it happens? Because if you tell me like the next day, like I don't have the emotional memory, I don't remember what it was, like, can you tell me when it's happening? And like, it might be an argument, but just remember, I told you to tell me because I do want to have the best communication that we can have. And and it has happened where I've tried to put up my defenses, because you got to protect yourself. After having like parents that don't do it for you, like especially as an adult, it's just gotten like that snapping up that wall of defense and wanting to fight for myself. It just like, it happens so automatically as like a trauma response. And he's very vulnerable, and he's had, I'm sure he had trauma in his life, but like he's just, it doesn't feel like it. Like
well-adjusted.
So well-adjusted. Oh my God. It's a breath of fresh air.
I can say that because I know I'm like well-adjusted. Yeah. I noticed that.
So we have such great communication.
Yeah.
Like, but even like I saw my sister and she went for the say something mean. It wasn't like terribly mean, but it was mean. And I was like, and I can't respond back that way. I refuse to take it to those low blows.
So I'm hearing like you've really started to find your boundaries, and also, also through someone telling you about a boundary, you're also finding your own boundaries for what you're willing to tolerate nowadays versus what you weren't able to kind of insulate back when you were younger.
I definitely feel like I spent most of my 20s trying to figure out my boundaries. Like right. I let go of jobs. If I felt uncomfortable around anyone, I wouldn't go to audition for a certain person because I wasn't like mentally stable enough in that moment. I feel like my career could be much further along if I didn't put my acknowledgement of where those boundaries lie in the forefront of where I wanted my energy to be. I wanted to be okay with me so I could go forward.
Well, you like as an onlooker, your boundaries were never respected or honored. So that would be terribly scary to go out into a world and be like, my boundaries don't get accepted or, honored. So anything could happen.
But I didn't know what they were.
Right. That's what I'm saying, though. Like, not only did you not know what they were, like you had been told, basically shown over and over again, that it doesn't matter even if you have them because they don't get honored, right? Over and over again. So, like, not only do you not know how you really feel about anything, but you've been shown over and over again that people just disregard them, the people closest to you, the people who are supposed to advocate and protect you, right? So that can make this whole world really scary. The entertainment industry is already really scary.
Yeah.
It's big, it's crazy, it's everything you've heard and nothing you've heard at the same time. It's all of that. And, that makes sense to me. I also really deeply, deeply relate to that feeling that my career would be further along had I gotten on this stuff earlier. Mm-hmm. Like where would I be if I could have unblocked some of this stuff in my early 20s, in my mid 20s? Like, how much further along, other things, what opportunities did I miss? I try not to spend too much time on it because it's like, what am I really going to, and honestly, maybe nothing would have been different. Honestly, maybe nothing, but I don't think that that's unusual for people in our line of work to get to our 30s and 40s and start doing a lot of this work and getting a lot of recovery and then looking back and being like, man, who could I have been? What could I have gained in this particular career? That's definitely been a through line. You're not alone in that one for sure. Or in any of this really, but like, that's a thing. Couple things, because I have a couple questions before we wrap it up.
Okay.
You spoke about therapy in your process. Is there anything else specifically that helped you in the process of kind of unraveling this and gaining some recovery or is there anything that really didn't help? Like, we know therapy has helped, like you. Is there anything that you're like, that really didn't help, or this person doing this or that avenue didn't help me at all?
I feel like this is very personal to everybody. So like what might work for me is definitely not going to be like a blanketed situation. For example, like the very first thing I ever tried, and it must have been after that kind of stuff that we happened in the dressing room. So I might have been like 25 or 26. Trying to remember where
That's so early to get a handle on this. Oh, I'm so happy for you.
I went to my first Al-Anon meeting by my house. And I think it is because my mom went to AA and I grew up in like the smoky room on the side because everyone smoked indoors at that time, and like the stale coffee and the stuff like that. I absolutely hated it. Mm-hmm. And I made myself share because I'm very familiar with it. Mm-hmm. As a person, I would trauma share on purpose to like see if you could hold my feelings. Like if you're going to tell somebody else I can't trust you, like I would use it as like
weaponize.
I would weaponize my vulnerability, which is not okay, which I learned. But like I was used to doing that, and I don't know if I did that so much at Al-Anon. Like I think I really was trying to like put on those shoes and see what it felt like. And I don't know if it's that I just haven't fully worked through stuff with my mom, that I just don't feel comfortable in those rooms, but the group therapy aspect, and maybe it's the fact that I have to ask for a sponsor to walk through that. I'm going to look at a group of strangers and have to pick one person to guide me, or like stay long enough and talk to enough people that I have to trust someone in the room. That scares the shit out of me. So I'm not sure how much it is Al-Anon specifically, or how much it's like my own things on top of that. That I tried and I couldn't stay consistent with it, which is why I eventually, God, how old was I? Like, now I'm the beginning of my 30s by the time ish that I am doing therapy, and that really was nice. And I feel like I need to, if I could do this every day, it would be great, and I'd feel great. And I set a time aside, but I don't always wake up on time to do this. But it's like, wake up, eat breakfast, journal for like a half an hour to 45 minutes would be great. And
let me I don't want to stop your train of thought, but when you journal, are you just journaling like just free association?
Anything.
Yeah, just whatever. Just keep it moving. Keep the pen moving until you're done. Okay.
My journaling comes from the artist way.
Yes. Okay. I was going to say it, like the artist way, or is it something? Some people do gratitude journals. Some people, it's like a Dear Diary. But like artist way is a little Dear Diary ish. It's just like vomit of everything you're thinking when you wake up.
Yeah, it's getting the thoughts out so they're not jangling around in your mind. Sometimes I'll end, like my therapist has said, why don't you end your journal with gratitude? So I'll like leave like 5-6 sentences to try to say. It just depends on how I'm feeling. The artist way says do 3 pages, but that's like an hour, and I don't always have an hour to journal because I don't think I write that fast. Whatever. I'm sure some people can do it, but I take forever. I do at least 2 pages, and then I would love to be able to work out and meditate. Mm-hmm. That would be, if I could do that every morning, whatever my workout is, whether it's yoga or just stretching or like going to the gym or whatever it is, just something to like get into my body, or a dance class, but I would love to just like get that out of my day in the very beginning. It's very few dance classes at like 8 a.m.
Right.
The gym's open though.
Who's getting up at 8? Oh, you. Okay.
Nobody. I'm trying. I'm trying to get up before that. But then if I do that every day, it kind of like locks me in. That mixture of 3 things: journal, workout, meditate.
I love that. I love it's very like specific, right? When people want guidance for healing, sometimes it's very ambiguous, right? Or it's a lot of like therapy, 12-step group there, and it's like, okay, but like, what can I do every day to try to keep myself out of this shit? And that's like a really good like 3 banger that maybe might be a magical.
I try to at least do that Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
Like Saturday I try, but sometimes like weekend.
I mean, well, this is the thing. Like perfection is an illusion, right?
Yeah.
Like rigidness is not always great. Rigidity is not necessarily fantastic. Flexibility is better, but it's like that you have a plan, right? It's not necessarily about did I do my things? Am I a good girl today? No, it's like these are the things that help me stay on track.
Good girl today. Shit. Yeah. If I don't if I'm like, we have to do this and then I don't do it, I'll punish myself.
Yeah. Bad girl.
Yeah. And then it defeats the point of it.
The shame and the guilt. Yep.
Yeah. Because I have to get everything right because that's how I get love. You have to keep everyone else happy. But then like, it's this punitive cycle that I have to, oh God. I got to just watch out for. I'm like, am I doing the perfectionist thing? All right. Take a breath. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The people pleasing and the perfectionism and the good girl stuff. That's also you're not alone. You are not alone in that. All right. Wrapping it up. So at the end of every Gray Maybe podcast, I ask a question. I say that I try not to give advice or that we don't give advice on the podcast, but we do offer suggestion, very Al-Anon, right? So do you have a suggestion for anybody who might be suffering with this topic right now?
Oh, God.
I mean, you did give you gave therapy, you gave the 3 things, but if there's any like words of wisdom, no pressure, that you want to give anybody who might be suffering in this moment.
I feel like it's not like I guess it is a suggestion, but you're enough. If I could I don't want a tattoo, but if I could tattoo anything, I would tattoo that. That's the first thing I wrote on a white bulletin board in big letters in my living room, just to remember, like, it doesn't matter what happened to you. It doesn't matter what mess ups you've had. Nothing. You are enough. You're enough to love yourself. You're enough to bet on yourself. You're enough, and treat yourself that way. Because everything before that, like, I also didn't respect other people's boundaries because I didn't have any boundaries. I didn't, you're enough. That's it. Whatever you need to do to keep your mind space in, you're enough.
That's excellent. Excellent, excellent. Jenni, I can't thank you enough for coming and being courageous to tell your story. And again, to me, like in public.
Yes. It's deceptively personal because I'm looking at you, but I'm like, oh yeah, anyone could hear this.
I know. You'll think about it. You'll let me know if there's anything, that gets yanked out. That's fine. But I really, really appreciate you being honest and courageous and transparent. And I really think your experience has the ability to really help a lot of people out and have people see themselves in it and also find some recovery and some serenity, not to get too 12-steppity, but some peace. So I thank you for doing that.
Yeah, of course.